I'm Laura, 38 female. I live in a quiet, tree-lined suburb that always felt like a promise of stability, in a house my husband Mark and I bought 15 years ago. As a professional archivist for the city, my life revolves around order, preservation, and the quiet truth that documents hold. Little did I know, the biggest secret wasn't buried in a dusty city ledger, but sitting right in my own garage, waiting for the day my world shattered. This is the story of how my husband tried to ruin me, and how a forgotten asset from his past became my key to the future. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Our life, or so I believed, was a carefully curated collection of successes. The centerpiece was the framed photo on our living room mantelpiece, Mark and me on our 10th anniversary trip to Italy. We're smiling, the Tuscan sun warming our faces, a picture of marital bliss. Mark, with his confident grin and impeccably tailored suit, was a successful real estate developer, a man who built dreams from dirt and blueprints. I was the quiet counterpoint, the steady archivist who found fulfillment in history and logic. We were, to our friends and family, the perfect couple, balanced, successful, and deeply in love. Our home reflected this image. It was a beautiful two-story colonial, filled with tasteful furniture, art from our travels, and the gentle hum of a life well lived. Our finances were intertwined, managed through a joint savings account where we diligently deposited a portion of our earnings. This account was our future. For retirement, for emergencies, for the comfortable, predictable life we were building together. Mark was always the one more focused on the grand financial picture. "You handle the history, Laura," he'd say with a chuckle, patting my hand. "I'll handle the future." I trusted him implicitly. Why wouldn't I? He was charming, ambitious, and for 15 years, he had been my partner in everything. My best friend, Jessica, a sharp and pragmatic financial advisor, was the only one who ever planted a seed of doubt, however small. During one of our weekly coffees, she had reviewed a statement for me as a favor. "It's a healthy account, Laura," she'd said, tapping her pen on the paper. "But Mark makes a lot of large withdrawals listed as business investments. Are you tracking the returns on these?" I waved it off. "It's his world, Jess. Real estate is all about moving capital around. It always comes back, plus some." Jessica had given me a look, one I couldn't quite decipher at the time, but she dropped it. In hindsight, her professional skepticism was a warning I was too trusting to heed. The illusion was so complete, so meticulously maintained, that I never saw the cracks forming beneath the surface. Mark had grown a bit distant in recent months, attributing it to the stress of a new development project. He spent more late nights at the office. His phone was always angled away from me, and his explanations for his absences were just vague enough to be plausible. "It's a high-stakes deal, honey. A real game changer," he'd say, kissing my forehead before disappearing into his home office for hours. I accepted it all. I was the supportive wife. My role was to maintain the calm at home while he wrestled with the dragons of commerce. The garage, however, held a piece of our history that didn't quite fit the polished narrative. Tucked under a heavy canvas cover sat a 1967 Ford Mustang, a gleaming silver relic. It was Mark's pride and joy from before we even met, but it was also a ghost from his first marriage. Years ago, during his messy divorce from his ex-wife, his lawyer had given him a piece of shrewd advice. To shield his most prized, non-liquid asset from being divided, he had signed the car's title over to me, his then-new, serious girlfriend. "It's just a formality," he had assured me, sliding the crisp, official document across the table. "Just to protect it. It'll always be our car, but legally it's yours. A symbol of my trust in you." I, young and in love, had signed the papers without a second thought, filed the title away with my personal documents, and largely forgot about it. The car was a weekend toy, a beautiful but impractical machine he'd tinker with on sunny afternoons. To me, it was just a large, dust-gathering object. To him, it was a symbol of his past. I had no idea it was destined to become the engine of my future, the one piece of our shared life that was, in the eyes of the law, unequivocally and entirely mine. The picture on the mantel showed a couple. The title in my filing cabinet told a different story. The day the facade crumbled started like any other Tuesday. I woke up, went for my morning run through the quiet neighborhood streets, and came home to find Mark already gone. Aha! Styly scribbled note was on the kitchen counter. Big meeting. Don't wait up. Love, M. It was standard practice lately. I showered, made my coffee, and sat down at my laptop to pay a few bills before heading to work at the city archives. We had a large quarterly property tax payment due, and I always handled the domestic finances. It was our system. He managed the big investments, I managed the household accounts. I logged into our joint savings account, the one we'd built for 15 years. My finger hovered over the mouse, ready to click the transfer button, but the number on the screen made me stop. I blinked, then leaned closer, certain I was misreading it. The balance, which should have been well into the six figures, a comfortable cushion of security, was not there. Instead, the screen displayed a figure so small it felt like a typo, $214.38. My breath caught in my throat. It had to be a mistake, a glitch in the bank system. I refreshed the page. The number remained, stark and unforgiving, $214.38. A cold dread, heavy and suffocating, began to creep up my spine. I clicked on the transaction history, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My eyes scanned the page, searching for an explanation, for some colossal bank error that would make sense of the void. And then I saw it. One single transaction, dated 3 days prior. A wire transfer. The recipient was a holding company I'd never heard of, SV Lifestyle Ventures LLC. The amount was staggering. It was everything. Every penny we had saved, every bonus Mark had deposited, every careful contribution I had made from my modest salary. Years of discipline, of shared dreams and future plans, were gone in a single, silent digital transfer. The memo line was blank. My first thought was fraud. We'd been hacked. Someone had stolen our life savings. I felt a surge of adrenaline and fear. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone to call Mark. He needed to know. We had to call the bank, the police, freeze everything. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. "Hey, you've reached Mark, leave a message." His voice, usually a source of comfort, now sounded hollow and distant. I called again. Voicemail, and again. Voicemail. Panic was turning into a sickening suspicion. Why wasn't he answering? A big meeting couldn't be that all-consuming. I sent a text, my thumbs fumbling on the screen. "Urgent, call me now, bank account has been emptied." I stared at the phone, waiting for the 3 little dots to appear, indicating he was typing a response. Nothing. The message was delivered but not read. I tried the bank. The fraud department was sympathetic but clinical. A woman with a calm, practiced voice walked me through the security questions. "Mrs. Henderson," she said, her tones softening slightly, "I see the transaction here. It was a wire transfer initiated online. It required a 2-factor authentication code that was sent to the primary phone number on the account." "My husband's phone," I whispered, the realization dawning on me like a slow, painful sunrise. "Yes," she confirmed. And the transfer was confirmed using the password and security questions associated with Mr. Henderson's profile. From the bank's perspective, this was not an unauthorized transaction. It was initiated by an account holder. The words hung in the air, dismantling my reality piece by piece. This wasn't a faceless hacker in a faraway country. This wasn't a technical glitch. This was Mark. My husband had deliberately, methodically, and silently drained our entire shared fortune. The note on the counter, the big meeting, the unanswered calls, it all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't a crisis he was unaware of. It was a plan he had executed. I ended the call, my body numb. I walked on unsteady feet into the living room and stared at the picture on the mantel. The smiling man in the photo was a stranger. A thief who had looked me in the eye, told me he loved me, and then stolen our future from under me. The house suddenly felt cold and alien, the tasteful furniture a stage set for a play whose final, tragic act I had just witnessed. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, it was more than just the money. He hadn't just stolen our savings, he had stolen our past. He had taken 15 years of my life, of my trust and love, and valued it at 0. The balance in the account wasn't just a number, it was a judgment. It was what I was worth to him. Nothing. The hours after the phone call with the bank were a blur of shock and paralysis. I sat on our expensive sofa, the one Mark had picked out, and stared at the blank television screen, seeing nothing. The quiet house felt cavernous, each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall a countdown to a future I could no longer imagine. The initial shock gave way to a cold, hard anger that began to solidify in my chest. He wouldn't even answer my calls. He had left me to discover treachery alone, a final, cowardly act of disrespect. My training as an archivist, the instinct to seek out, organize, and understand information, slowly began to cut through the fog of emotion. A crime had been committed, a moral one, if not a legal one the bank would pursue, and criminals leave a trail. Mark was arrogant, but arrogance bred carelessness. His digital life was as much a part of him as his tailored suits. I went to his home office, a room I rarely entered. It was his sanctuary, a space of polished wood and leather that always smelled faintly of his expensive cologne. I started with his laptop. It was password protected, of course, but after 15 years, I knew his patterns. His passwords were always a combination of something meaningful and a significant year. I tried his mother's maiden name and our anniversary year. Access denied. I tried the name of his first dog and the year he founded his business. Access denied. Then I remembered the Mustang, his first love, as he often joked. I typed Silver Stallion 1967. The screen flickered and unlocked. A bitter smile touched my lips. Of course. The desktop was organized, but my eyes were drawn to his personal email account, left open in a browser tab. It was a sea of business correspondence, but I used the search bar. I didn't know what I was looking for, so I started with the name of the LLC from the bank transfer. SV Lifestyle Ventures. The results were instantaneous and sickening. It wasn't a long trail, but it was damning. There were emails between Mark and a lawyer discussing the formation of the LLC just 2 months prior. The registered agent was Mark. The managing member, however, was listed as Sophia Vance. The SV in the company name. A quick search of the name in his email history opened the floodgates. There were dozens of emails between them. They were sickeningly affectionate, filled with pet names and plans for their future. Sophia was young, beautiful in her profile picture, and full of breathless excitement about her new business, a high-end social media marketing agency. Mark was her angel investor, her hero. He was funding her dream, with my money, with our money. One email from Sophia stood out, sent 4 days ago. Mark, my love, I can't believe it's finally happening. The lease is signed for the office space, and the equipment supplier needs the wire transfer by tomorrow to confirm the order. Once the money is in the SV account, we can start building our empire. I love you more than words can say. You're making all my dreams come true. Mark's reply, sent the next day, the day of the transfer, was short and triumphant. It's done. The empire has been funded. See you tonight, all my love. I felt a wave of nausea. The late nights at the office, the high-stakes deals, it was all her. He wasn't building a development, he was building a new life. A new life with a younger woman, financed by the systematic destruction of ours. My mind, the archivist's mind, started connecting the dots, creating a timeline. The LLC formation. The flirty emails escalating to concrete business plans. The final, massive transfer of funds. It was a premeditated act of financial and emotional demolition. Driven by a grim new purpose, I kept digging. I opened a folder on his desktop labeled Personal Finances. It contained spreadsheets, bank statements, and investment portfolios, but one file was named simply Asset Strategy. Inside was a detailed breakdown of all our joint assets, our house, my 401k, his investment portfolio, and the joint savings account. Next to the savings account, he had written a note, liquidate for SV seed funding, Q3. We were in Q3. It was a business plan. I was just a line item to be zeroed out. But then my eyes caught another line on the spreadsheet, one I hadn't expected. It was at the very bottom, under a section titled Hidden Protected. It read, 67 Mustang, title in LH name. Current estimated value, 85K plus, non-marital asset, legally protected. I stared at the words, my heart starting a new, different kind of beat. It wasn't the frantic panic of before, but a slow, powerful drum of an idea. The car, the dusty, forgotten car in the garage. He had listed it as a hidden asset. He acknowledged in his own private document that it was legally mine. He had been so clever, so meticulous in his plan to divest himself of our shared life, but he had overlooked the one thing he had put in my name to protect himself from a previous wife. His scheme to cheat his ex had created the perfect loophole in his scheme to cheat me. The shock was finally receding, replaced by a crystalline, diamond-hard resolve. He had left me with $214.38 and a broken heart, but he had also left me with a 1967 Ford Mustang. He thought he had taken everything. He had no idea how wrong he was. I closed the laptop, the anger in my chest no longer a raging fire, but a cold, focused point of light. The archivist in me had found the document that mattered. Now, it was time to decide how to use it. The revelation from Mark's laptop was a lifeline in a sea of despair. For the first time in 2 days, I had something other than my own pain to focus on, a tangible asset, a legal fact. The 1967 Ford Mustang. I walked out to the garage and pulled back the heavy canvas cover. The car was magnificent, even under a layer of dust. Its silver paint gleamed faintly in the dim light, a dormant beast of chrome and steel. I ran a hand over the cool metal of the hood. This wasn't just a car, it was leverage. It was justice, waiting to be turned on. My first call wasn't to a divorce lawyer. It was to Jessica. I met her at her office, a sleek, minimalist space that was the complete opposite of my own cluttered, historical world. I laid out the story in a flat, emotionless tone, the empty bank account, the emails, the LLC, Sophia. Jessica listened without interruption, her expression growing more thunderous with each detail. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes or hugs. She slid a notepad across her desk. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "He committed financial infidelity on a massive scale. We need to act, but we need to be smart. You mentioned the car. Do you have the title?" I nodded. "It's in my personal safety deposit box. He put it in my name a decade ago to hide it from his first wife during their divorce." Jessica's eyes lit up with a fierce, predatory gleam. "Oh, Mark," she murmured, a grim smile playing on her lips. "You magnificent idiot. Laura, that is not a marital asset. He gifted it to you. The title is a legal document of ownership. It's yours, clean and simple." She leaned forward, her professional mode fully engaged. "But we need to know its exact value, and we need to understand the full scope of what he took. Your goal right now is information. Become an expert on your own life." Her words galvanized me. I spent the next week in a quiet, methodical frenzy of investigation, my archivist skills honed to a razor's edge. I was no longer a grieving wife, I was a researcher building a case. I started with the car. I found a reputable classic car appraiser online and scheduled a private assessment. The appraiser, a kindly older man named George, came to the house while Mark was, according to a brief, cold text, traveling for work. George spent 2 hours examining the Mustang, his appreciation for the vehicle evident. "It's a K-code," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "That's the high-performance V8, all original parts matching numbers. This is the real deal, ma'am. In this condition, at auction, you're looking at a conservative estimate of $90,000. Could go as high as 110 if the right collectors are in the room." $90,000. The number echoed in my head. It wasn't the nearly $250,000 he'd stolen, but it was a substantial sum. It was a start. It was power. I paid George for the official appraisal, the document feeling heavy and significant in my hands. Next, I turned my attention back to Mark's finances. With Jessica's guidance, I used what I'd learned from his laptop to dig deeper. I logged into our joint credit card accounts. The statements told a story of lavish dinners I was never invited to, hotel rooms in our own city, and expensive gifts, jewelry, designer bags, sent to an address I didn't recognize. I looked up the address. It was a trendy downtown loft. Sophia's loft. He hadn't just funded her business. He had been funding her entire lifestyle. Jessica helped me use public records to pull the incorporation documents for SV Lifestyle Ventures LLC. There it was in black and white, a registered business, with a bank account that I now knew held all of my money. I hired a private investigator, a recommendation from one of Jessica's more colorful clients. He was discreet and efficient. Within 3 days, he provided a full report. It included photographs of Mark and Sophia together, looking very much like a couple, holding hands, kissing outside her office building. The report also contained a background check on Sophia Vance. She had a string of failed business ventures and a significant amount of personal debt before Mark, her angel investor, had swooped in. Each new piece of information was a fresh stab of pain, but it also hardened my resolve. The grief was still there, a hollow ache in my chest, but it was now overlaid with a cold, clear purpose. I was meticulously documenting the scale of his betrayal, not just for my own understanding, but as evidence. Jessica reviewed every document I gathered. "This is incredible, Laura," she said, looking at the file I'd compiled. The appraisal, the credit card statements, the PI's report, the LLC documents. "You've built a fortress. He thinks he left you with nothing, but he has no idea what he's up against." The final piece of the investigation was the most personal. I went to my safety deposit box at the bank. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside, beneath my birth certificate and some family heirlooms, was a large manila envelope. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled it out. There it was, the official certificate of title for a 1967 Ford Mustang. My name, Laura Henderson, was printed clearly as the sole owner. The date of issue was over 10 years ago. It was a promise he'd made, a declaration of trust he had used for his own cynical purposes. He had given me this document as a shield for himself, never imagining it would one day become my sword. I looked at my name on that line, and for the first time, I didn't see the victim. I saw the owner. With the appraisal in one hand and the title in the other, I felt a shift in the balance of power. I was no longer reacting, I was preparing to act. The investigation phase was over. It was time to build the plan. I met with Jessica in her office, spreading the documents across her large glass desk like a general laying out battle plans. He took approximately $240,000 from the savings account. I started, my voice steady. He spent at least $20,000 on credit cards for her in the last 6 months, and he funneled all of it into her business. The car is appraised at a minimum of $90,000. It's not everything, but it's my only liquid asset. Jessica leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her chin. "It's not about getting every penny back right now, Laura. It's about leverage. It's about hitting him where he is most vulnerable, his ego and his assets. The car is your silver bullet. He thinks it's his, sitting safely in your garage. He's forgotten the legal reality." Our plan had to be two-pronged. First, we had to secure my financial standing and legally separate myself from his actions. Second, we had to execute the revenge, a move so precise and unexpected it would leave him reeling. The first part was legal and methodical. On Jessica's advice, I didn't file for divorce immediately. "That's the last step," she explained. "The moment you file, the courts get involved and everything freezes. We need to act before that happens. You have the right to sell your own property." She connected me with a discreet but highly effective family law attorney, a colleague of hers named David. In a quiet meeting, David reviewed my evidence. He was impressed by the thoroughness of my investigation. "This is an open and shut case of dissipation of marital assets," he said. "When you do file, you'll be in an incredibly strong position to get more than 50% of the remaining assets, like the house, to compensate for what he took. But your friend is right. The car is your immediate tool." So the plan began to take shape. Step 1, secure the asset. The Mustang was my key. I couldn't just leave it in the garage where Mark could potentially access it or, in a fit of rage, damage it. I contacted a specialty auto consignment dealer that George, the appraiser, had recommended. They specialized in high-end classic cars and worked with a network of private collectors. I explained the situation briefly. I was the legal owner and needed to sell the car quickly and quietly. The dealer, a man named Marcus, was professional and asked no personal questions. He only cared about the title and the car's condition. We arranged for him to pick up the car the next day. Step 2, the silent sale. Marcus was confident he could find a private buyer within a week, bypassing a public auction which would take too long and create a public record Mark might stumble upon. A private sale would be a quiet transaction. The money would be wired directly to a new bank account that I would open, in my name only. Jessica helped me set it up at a different bank from the one Mark and I had used. This new account was my financial fortress, impenetrable to him. Step 3, lay the groundwork. While the car was being sold, I continued to play the part of the oblivious, heartbroken wife. Mark had returned from his business trip. He was distant, almost jumpy, but he clearly had no idea that I knew everything. He'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd give a weak, sad smile and say I was just feeling tired. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a knife. He likely assumed my mood was due to his emotional distance, the classic symptom of a guilty conscience projecting its own narrative. He was so wrapped up in his own drama that he couldn't see mine. Every moment of feigned ignorance was excruciating, but it was necessary. I was setting a trap, and it required patience. Step 4, prepare the confrontation. This was the part Jessica called theatrical but necessary. We decided the confrontation couldn't just be a tearful argument in the living room. It had to be a formal, undeniable severing of our life together. David, the lawyer, drafted the official divorce papers. I filled them out, my hand steady as I signed my name. We would serve him, but not yet. The Timmy. NG had to be perfect. The call from Marcus came 5 days later. "I have a buyer," he said. "A collector in Arizona. He's seen the appraisal and the photos. He's offering $95,000. No questions asked. If you accept, the money can be in your account within 48 hours. I accepted. The silver bullet had been fired. 2 days later, I logged into my new bank account. The balance read $95,000. It was the most beautiful number I had ever seen. The plan was now in motion. All the pieces were in place. The car was gone, the money was secure, and the legal documents were ready. Now, all that was left was to confront the architect of my pain and show him the final invoice for his betrayal. Jessica and I had one final meeting to choreograph the last act. "Remember," she said, her eyes serious, "stay calm, don't yell, present the facts. The truth is your weapon. Let him be the one to fall apart." The day I chose for the confrontation was a Saturday. Mark was home, relaxing in the den, watching golf on TV. He seemed unusually cheerful, which only fueled the cold fire in my stomach. I knew why. The Pie's final update had included a photo of a grand opening sign in the window of Sophia's new, chic office space. Her dream, funded by my life savings, was now a reality. He thought he had won. I walked into the den and switched off the television. He looked up annoyed. "Hey, I was watching that." "We need to talk, Mark," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the emotion that had been churning inside me for weeks. He sighed, a long-suffering sound. "Laura, if this is about me being distant lately, I've told you work has been insane." "It is about your work," I interrupted, cutting him off. "Specifically, your work in setting up SV Lifestyle Ventures LLC. The color drained from his face. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. He sat up, his body suddenly tense. I don't know what you're talking about." I didn't engage with the lie. I simply placed a thin file folder on the coffee table in front of him. "I do," I said. I opened it. The top page was a copy of the wire transfer confirmation for $240,000 from our joint savings to her company. His eyes darted from the paper to my face, searching for something, tears, anger, hysterics. He found none. "How did you?" he stammered. I ignored him, continuing my presentation. I laid out the next document, the credit card statement with the lavish gifts for Sophia highlighted in yellow. Then, a photograph from the private investigator of him kissing her outside her new office. His jaw tightened. Laura, listen to me, he started, his voice shifting from denial to damage control. It's not what it looks like. It was a business investment, a mistake. I was going to tell you. You were going to tell me? I asked, my voice still eerily calm. When? After you had emptied every last cent we owned? After you had set up your new life with your new partner? I let the questions hang in the air. He had no answers. He just stared at the evidence, a cornered animal. What do you want, Laura? He finally asked, his voice low and defeated. To yell at me? To humiliate me? Go on, get it over with. Humiliation is your area of expertise, Mark, not mine, I replied coolly. I just want a few things. First, I want a divorce. I slid a large envelope across the table. You've been served. He flinched as if the envelope had burned him. He picked it up and saw the official stamp from the law office of David Chen. The reality of it was finally sinking in. Second, I continued, my voice unwavering, I want my half of our life back. But since you've already invested it, we'll have to make other arrangements. Which brings me to my final point. I paused, letting the silence stretch. This was the moment I had been replaying in my mind for days. This was the checkmate. I'm moving out tomorrow, I said. I'll need some funds to get settled. A deposit on a new apartment, furniture, things like that. So I decided to liquidate one of my assets. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. What assets? Laura, you don't have any assets. I managed our finances. I gave him a small, cold smile. You managed the marital finances, yes, but you forgot about the gift you gave me 10 years ago. A very generous, very thoughtful gift that you put entirely in my name. He was still confused, his mind racing. And then a slow, dawning horror spread across his features as he understood. The car, he whispered. The Mustang. The Mustang, I confirmed. My Mustang, to be precise. According to the title you so cleverly put in my name to protect it from your last wife. I leaned forward slightly. It's a beautiful car, Mark. A real classic. So classic, in fact, that a private collector in Arizona just paid $95,000 for it. The money is sitting in my new bank account, the one you don't have access to. He stared. At me, his mouth slightly agape. The arrogant developer, the master of the deal, looked utterly broken. He had been outmaneuvered. His own cynical ploy from a decade ago had come back to be his undoing. He wasn't angry, he was in shock. You sold my car, he finally managed to say, his voice cracking. No, Mark, I said, standing up. I gathered my file, my movements precise and final. I sold my car. You can consider the proceeds my down payment on a new life, the one I'm funding myself. As for the rest of what you owe me, my lawyer will be in touch to discuss the division of the house and your remaining assets. I imagine the judge will be very interested to hear about your dissipation of our marital savings. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him sitting there amidst the wreckage of his own making. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had heard the most satisfying sound in the world, the sound of his silence as his entire world came crashing down around him. Leaving the house that day felt like shedding a skin. I didn't pack much, just my clothes, personal documents, and the things that held real sentimental value. The expensive furniture, the art, the symbols of a life that was never really mine, I left behind for Mark to contemplate. I spent the night at Jessica's, and for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and practical arrangements. Mark, humbled and financially crippled by his own actions, did not put up a fight. My lawyer, David, was relentless. Armed with the mountain of evidence I had collected, he painted a clear picture of Mark's financial infidelity to the mediator. The dissipation of assets was so blatant that Mark's lawyer advised him to settle quickly and quietly to avoid a protracted and embarrassing court battle. In the end, the settlement was heavily in my favor. I received the house, which I promptly put on the market, and 65% of Mark's investment portfolio and retirement accounts to offset the savings he had stolen. By the time the ink was dry on the divorce decree, I was financially whole again, and then some. The proceeds from the sale of the house, combined with the settlement and the money from the car, gave me a level of financial independence I had never had before. Mark's life, however, went in the opposite direction. Sophia's SV Lifestyle Ventures was a disaster. It turned out that having a chic office and expensive equipment didn't translate to business acumen. Without Mark's continuous cash infusions to prop it up, the business hemorrhaged money. Within 6 months, the grand opening signs were replaced with "for lease" signs. I heard through the grapevine that their relationship imploded under the financial strain. The empire he had promised her was built on a foundation of stolen sand, and it washed away with the first tide of reality. The last I heard, Mark had to sell his remaining assets and was working for another developer, his reputation in tatters. As for me, I didn't stay in the same city. The house, the streets, the archives, they all held too many ghosts. I sold the house for a handsome profit and moved 3 states away to a smaller, coastal city where I took a job as the head archivist at a university library. It was a step up professionally and a step into a new, unwritten life. I bought a small, charming bungalow a few blocks from the ocean. It was nothing like the grand colonial I had shared with Mark. It was smaller, brighter, and filled only with things that I chose that brought me joy. The picture on my new mantle was not of a smiling couple, but a picture of me and Jessica, laughing on the beach the day I closed on my new home. The $95,000 from the Mustang became my freedom fund. I didn't touch it for the settlement or the house. I kept it separate, a symbol of my victory. I used a small portion of it to buy myself a car, not a classic, but a reliable, sensible hybrid that suited my new life perfectly. The rest remains invested, a nest egg that is entirely my own, a testament to the fact that sometimes the end of one road is the beginning of a much better one. I sometimes think about that silver Mustang, a beautiful machine built for power and speed, a relic of a past that wasn't mine. He thought it was his ultimate symbol of cleverness and control, a hidden piece of his identity. But in the end, that's all it was, a thing, an asset. The real power wasn't in the car, it was in the simple, overlooked document that proved it was mine. He put the title in my name as an act of deceit, but it became my declaration of independence. He tried to leave me with a zero balance, but he forgot he'd already given me the keys to my own future. And now, the road ahead is clear, and I'm the only one in the driver's seat.